Well, we can go ahead and get started.
We're going to take roll.
Of course. So we'll go ahead and get this meeting kicked off, and I will start here with the roll. We'll go here with John Boyce.
Here and attending in East Lansing and Ingham County.
Very nice. Thank you. Joel Lichty.
Joel Lichty from East Lansing and Ingham County.
Joshua Cooper.
I am present, and I'm also reporting from East Lansing, Michigan, and Ingham County.
Troy Fossbender.
Present and from East Lansing and Ingham County.
Syed Hayter.
Yeah, I'm here too. I'm in East Lansing. I think it's Clinton County.
Okay. Julie Rojeski.
Here and calling in from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Okay. Scott McCormick.
And I'm calling in from East Lansing and Ingham County.
Perfect. Turn it over to you, Scott.
The first item is the approval of the agenda. Has anyone not seen the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Need a motion to approve.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Any objection to changing the vote to by acclamation? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. The next item was the approval of the minutes. We have two of them to look at. One was from 16 November. Has everyone looked at that? Or has anyone not looked at that? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve the November 16th agenda?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? Any objection to changing the motion to by acclamation?
What do you mean by that, Scott?
By acclamation means that unless there's an objection, then it's a unanimous vote. It saves you time. You don't have to have everybody say yes. If somebody's got a no vote, then they would object to the acclamation.
Correct.
So it's just a Robert's rule that allows you to go through something a little more quickly than waiting for everyone to vote.
Okay.
Hearing no objection, the November 16th minutes are approved. The January 4th, the last meeting's minutes. Has anyone not read it? Okay, I need a motion to approve those.
I move that we approve the January 4th minutes.
Thank you, John. And a second?
Second.
A second.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there any objection to changing the motion to by acclamation? Hearing none, the January 4th minutes are approved. The next item is written communications.
I'd like to inquire. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this, but item 4.2, item 4.3, and as well as item 5.1 on my end are blank PDF documents. I was just curious if I was missing something.
On my copy, the agenda item report for the traffic calming action plan update just has the 5 topics, 2 subject, meeting, department, and staff, because the committee was supposed to report on that on this one. And so they haven't done the report. So that's just a placeholder. The other one was one that I had asked to be included into the agenda, which is I would like the commissioners to, we'd like to have a discussion about what are some of the important transportation or mobility issues in East Lansing. It may or may not generate an action item for us. It may just familiarize it. I, for example, had sent to Nicole a list of the 10 worst accident locations in East Lansing. And then I wanted the other commissioners to weigh in because all of you have probably lived here a lot longer than I have. And so that's why there's nothing in that report. That's just an open discussion. Okay. Nicole, can you refresh me what the written communications item was? Or Julie?
It was an email from Mary Hyderson, right? She was unable to attend the last meeting due to some confusion around the meeting numbers.
Oh, right. I saw that. Yes.
Yeah.
Nicole, do we know why that
that was
happened?
included as, kind of part of the minutes too.
Okay.
So everybody had that. So to me, I was thinking of that as part of the January 4th minutes
Oh, okay.
to go back and forth with that item.
Okay.
Okay.
So for the written communication as described on the agenda, the only thing that came through, and it's not necessarily an action item at this point, but it is something in the past that Julie has brought up to this commission. And we have been getting a couple comments from the public about the traffic for the Starbucks drive-through.
Oh.
On Saturday. So just wanted to give an update with that because right now we received, some communication on that. And the first step at this point is the police department is going to start really taking a harder look at that area and seeing what they can do to help alleviate some of that traffic congestion and back up, onto Grand River. So I just wanted to bring that up because, that did come up here actually today as a written communication to our department, not necessarily to the Transportation Commission.
Okay. Do we have any communications from the audience?
We do have a couple of people calling in, so I'm going to go down the list here. Just a reminder that you have 2 minutes to speak when I allow you to talk. Caller with the last 3 digits, 150. You can address the commission. You have 2 minutes.
You may need to unmute yourself.
May need to press *6.
Go ahead, 150. $150. We cannot hear you. You may need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
Go ahead to the next.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can't get it through.
Oh, there you are.
You can. We can hear you. If you'd like to address.
The FedEx drive-through? Is that what you were referring to right now?
No, there's a Starbucks.
Okay. All right. Never mind. Take me off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 396. You can address the commission. You have 2 minutes. Caller with the last 3 digits, 396. You can address the commission. You may need to unmute yourself.
You can unmute by pressing *6.
Okay,
Hello.
There you go.
Hello.
go
Yes.
ahead.
Yes. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. My apologies for not being able to speak at the January meeting. Oh, my name is Mary Hyderson. Sorry, I'm at 343 Highland Avenue in the city. Again, my apology for not being able to speak to last meeting. And I wanted to thank, first of all, Chief Johnson for his patrol car presence on Highland Avenue since the November meeting when we brought the speeding issue to your notice. This was particularly noticed in December. We look forward to the assignment of a neighborhood resource team officer. Secondly, I wanted to thank the Department of Public Works for replacing, I believe, 2 or 3 new stop signs at Highland Avenue headed north. And we appreciate that. They're new, they're shiny, and hopefully noticed. Wanted to make a new issue, and that was while walking the neighborhood recently. I noticed Cowley Street, which is 1 block east, has 3 slow children playing signs. 2 are heading north and 1 south. I would like to propose that same signage for our street, Highland Avenue, and a minimum 1 northbound and 1 southbound. You should be aware and might be aware that the New Hope Baptist Church on Highland Avenue has their playground just inches away from the sidewalk where children play regularly, especially on Sunday services. This, at a minimum, I feel should qualify for a slow children playing signage. Okay, speed limit signs. I'm very sad to report that Highland Avenue only has 1 speed limit sign. That sign is headed south in front of 249 Highland Avenue, attached to a light bulb. There's no speed limit sign headed north. I think it's a serious oversight considering the amount of traffic on our street, and especially since the speeds are excessive and stop signs blown through. So I'm hoping that you might be able to place that signage 25 miles per hour at the top of a list for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole, did you get all of those locations for us to discuss later? Thank you. Go ahead, Brad.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 963. You can address the commission. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Alice Strager. First to note, most commissions and boards, including City Council and Planning Commission, allow people 5 minutes. I don't think you would find yourself so backed up if you actually allowed people a little more time to speak so that they could get out their thoughts. Listening to the last meeting, I was somewhat concerned that it sounded like the commission was making decisions about what it should and shouldn't cover. Just to be clear, your duties and your powers are laid out in the Code of Ordinances. If you need any help finding that section of the code, you just basically go to the Code of Ordinances and search Transportation Commission, and that's where it's laid out. Also related to the discussion last time, it seemed like some people seem to think that neighborhoods all have some legal existence and legal powers. Most neighborhoods in the city of East Lansing have no legal existence, and the city charter does not recognize neighborhoods at all. So it's a very quasi-governmental kind of system in most of the city. And finally, I would just ask that when you're making decisions, you consider the evidence base for what you're doing. I get somewhat frustrated listening to decisions being made that don't seem to have an evidence base. So for example, if you're considering putting up signs that are supposed to achieve a particular thing, do they actually achieve that particular thing? One of the things I learned from the Department of Public Works and from the Transportation Commission that was super interesting to me is that stop signs sometimes paradoxically have a reverse effect, where you sometimes have intersections that are not controlled by stop signs. People sometimes actually slow down more than they do with stop signs. So please consider evidence-based, in part because when you add more and more and more signs to a neighborhood, it becomes visually overwhelming, and it becomes doesn't really feel like a neighborhood when there's just so many signs all over the place. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all the callers that we have today.
Okay, as long as she's still on, I just would like to say that it was my misunderstanding that East Lansing didn't have homeowners associations. When I moved here, I moved from another part of the state that's what existed everywhere. And so that was my lack of knowledge about the local area, not because I thought they had some power that obviously they don't. And I apologize for that. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the next item. The first item was the initial list for discussion. First one was someone from Meridian Township Transportation Commission, someone from Lansing, someone from MDOT, Chad Connolly, the police officer in charge of Neighborhood Resource Team, with particularly, and then I'm not familiar, who is Shauna Dryham?
Shanna Draheim. She is a former city council member who works for some local organization that does municipal leadership. And she has previously served on the Transportation Commission, but looks at issues related to transportation more broadly at the state level, as well as following national trends. And
Okay.
because she is someone who knows our city and also knows the topics that are au courant in our discussions, I thought it would be worth bringing her to see if she has any thoughts or things that we should keep on our radar.
Okay, and what I'm going to do is take as an action item to work with Nicole to reach out to each of these individuals, each of these departments and agencies, whatever, and see if we can get them on a schedule to at least come and talk at our monthly meeting. I mean, we've got 5 months there already lined up. Is anyone have a burning desire for someone to be first? Okay, and what I will do.
I really am hopeful that the neighborhood resource team will be a helpful partner in some of the issues that come before us. And so I guess it would be my preference that we engage with them sooner than later.
Okay, I think you're right. I think we ought to have them first.
Yes, that's what I would propose.
Do we have a point of contact that I can reach out to, Nicole? Okay, then I'll work with Nicole to get that and send an invite for our March meeting.
And I would say it sounds like Officer Chad Conley is sort of leading that group of folks, but it's not a huge team. And so I think it would be beneficial to invite all of them if they're available and interested to come to be part of the conversation. But I leave that to you and Nicole to clarify.
Yep, we can get the right people. Make sure that we can do that. If I can just interject one thing here, you know, a lot of the homework that was put out at the last meeting was to send around ideas for this list to be created. This list was only one person's list. I only got information from one person. So if anybody has different ideas, I would probably put them out there.
Yeah, I would particularly, I would like to invite somebody from the state police, as well as possibly somebody that deals with the transportation mobility issues for MSU. And the third one that I'm looking for is a person that can help me address the mobility needs of the aging residents in the city itself, not just for medical reasons, but because they have all sorts of other reasons to socialize or eventually socialize. And so the person that I was working with on that particular topic through CBTA is no longer in that space. So I'm researching to find out who would be the right person. Anybody else have anybody to add?
Yeah, Nicole, do we have anybody from Tri-County? I think we had them before, right? So they look at the county level, right? What different mobility issues and all that.
Yeah, we can definitely get the contact information from the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission.
Okay, any other discussion on this topic? Traffic calming action plan. Did the group of three decide who was going to be the spokesperson for that committee?
I don't believe we did.
Oh, so you're volunteering, John?
No, I think last time what we talked about is we should discuss this as a group.
Okay.
And then identify some areas, because, you know, I read that and there are a lot of things available, but, you know, we need to focus on our own needs, right? So I think it will be better to identify some areas where we need improvements or where we want to add something more.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I provided a summary that Nicole added to the notes you want, I can give a high level overview of that quickly.
Yes, please.
If people don't mind, I'll share my screen. How's my screen show? Is that coming in okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So part of the discussion there, this is more of a stage setter about what to do and how to move forward. So I looked at, there's data here from Ann Arbor, Lansing, and Grand Rapids. We're definitely smaller than all of them, but we have similar characteristics, being Michigan cities with similar traffic laws and funding constraints. And I look at what we have. So being I understand our system the best, we have the most complicated system. You know, we have different thresholds, different votings, requirements for the commission to get involved. Then when you look at, say, Ann Arbor, you know, they have a trigger of 50%, triggers a questionnaire. Then there'll be a walk-in workshop, there'll be a workshop, a walking tour, a final plan developed by a professional engineer. And then there's a 50% more vote. Lansing, you trigger traffic calming by 25% of addresses. Police and fire will review the routes. The study will conduct a traffic study. Council will review and approve as necessary. Grand Rapids, they have two phases similar to ours. First one is education. Second one is engineering improvements. Fire will approve that as well. And I think oftentimes that's handled by their traffic department. When we look at ours, we have a lot more, we have different levels, which is very unique. In level 1, which is the letters, education, similar to what Grand Rapids does. Level 2 and 3, which in many ways are very similar, and that you're doing physical countermeasures. The other one that we have that's kind of tough is the idea of following someone around and sending them a letter. You know, these plans were written in the early 2000s when the city had more staff, and all these plans came into origination about that same time. And there's been changes in technology, such as the increase in radar signs or the possibility of using cameras. But also the other thing that's come about full circle is just plain old enforcement. And I think hitting the neighborhood resource team would be a powerful ally in this process moving forward for traffic calming, because that's the most direct impact. But also the idea of educating people as well, because signs have a limited effect and signs need to be at the appropriate place to be effective. And every sign we put up can add a cost or confusion as well. So there's some opportunities here. And so this is just an overview to set the stage for further discussion. And so we've been talking internally on the staff level about we might request funding, we might program consultant funding to help lead this discussion going forward to provide more options. But I think the power of the Transportation Commission might be what's feasible for the commission to add value. Where does the commission feel comfortable weighing in on? The one thing that's unique from the other jurisdictions is no one else talks about parking, versus the East Lansing plan specifically discusses parking. And parking is a traffic calming measure in certain ways, but not, you know, it's unique. And I see that as being one of the more problematic areas that can cause trouble for the commission. So subject to your questions, I'll stop sharing my screen here, but
no, leave it up if you don't mind.
Okay.
Do you feel that it would be appropriate to simplify this process, all of these steps, or do you think that it's just a question of how you implement it?
I think simplifying would be helpful, and maybe phase 1 and 2, education and enforcement, but also bring in the police together too. You know, the first step of that education enforcement. And if we have a good ally, if the neighborhood resource teams, that might be a good way to nip things in the bud, you know, because we're going to have every year when students return, we have issues because new students come, new traffic patterns are cutting through neighborhoods, or the new crop of kids getting their licenses too in neighborhoods. You know, sometimes it just takes some corrective action to change their behavior versus.
So if we were to approach a consortium of responsible parties to talk about what we should do besides yourself and the police, who would that include?
I would say
would include somebody from MSU.
Not necessarily, because they have some expertise certainly,
but I guess my view is that if they're one of the affected parties, the students or the staff, they probably should have a voice in whatever's discussed.
I think if they're a resident or they would have that, and we could certainly involve communication aspects with that are the themes that are shared with the students at MSU as well.
Okay.
Like move safe and some of the education about where do you ride your moped? What direction do you ride your bike in the bike lane? Do you ride your moped on the sidewalk? Where do you park? There's some general education themes that are important to everyone. But I think the core group should be police, DPW,
Possibly neighborhood
yes,
associations.
yes, perfect, Nicole. And specifically the neighborhoods closer to campus.
And as we're putting things back to, neighborhood associations itself to help with some of the minor issues, it would be good to get their input from the beginning.
Scott, Nicole, did you send this? Do we have this document somewhere?
Yes, it's in the meeting minutes or meeting agenda.
I clicked
The
that
packet.
and yeah, but it goes to something else.
Let me look.
This is under the traffic calming, right? A PDF.
It's not in there. It's
Yeah, it's not there. It's not there. I looked at some of the documents, federal and other cities. Parking is not typically addressed by the traffic calming. Basically, it's a traffic volume, the cut through traffic, and the speeding. Those are the two issues they talk about. I think we are unique in that sense. Is parking is part of the traffic calming, right?
And yes, and being a university area, and I think that was more of a concern about near term. And grant, yes, on-street parking does calm speed, but that might be mixing some of the issues here, because I think traffic calming should be traffic calming versus neighborhood parking issues, which are discrete issues.
It is on page 24 of the agenda packet.
Oh, okay.
Scott, thank you for putting this together. I thought it was insightful and it was interesting to see how other cities approach it. And again, thank you for putting it together. My question would be, are we as a committee deciding whether or not we're going to reevaluate the types of issues that we speak on and deal with, or are we more so trying to find an avenue to bring on almost an advisory board or a collection of individuals who can help us determine what we as a committee should or shouldn't be dealing with? I'm just trying to better understand what are our next steps after analyzing this.
Sorry, Scott, you're muted.
Sorry, anytime the commission wants to address something, it's appropriate for us to pull in whatever intelligence is in the specific space we're dealing with in order to make sure we haven't missed something. It's like my point about all the stakeholders. You have to get all the stakeholders involved in order to involve it. So what I would suggest is that if we can pull together between you and your team and Scott deciding who should be talking about this, we can identify one of our meetings to have a working discussion with them, having had the read ahead, to present what they think might be useful and beneficial for the community from their viewpoints. And then we can look at it in terms of whether or not we think that's part of our mission and whether that makes sense to recommend. Okay.
I appreciate the clarification.
And if I may, the purpose here is to allow a forum for residents to express concerns of traffic or speeding.
Correct.
And the tough one, but the problem statement I think here is the current policy effective at meeting those concerns.
Right, and once we have what we think is a viable plan, then we can open that up for the residents to call in and discuss and talk about.
Scott, for
do
like a
have one-
level 2. Oh, go.
I just have one question. It was from the last caller. Is there a reason it's a 2-minute and not a 5-minute? Yes, Nicole.
We haven't adopted a 5-minute session. That's something we can do ahead of time at the next meeting. We have to adopt it. The standard is 2 minutes.
Yeah, let's put it on the agenda for next week for discussion as to whether we want to extend it longer than 2 minutes, because we can always, if a particular person isn't as succinct as another person, we can always give them a little more time. But the question is that let's just put it on our agenda for the commission to discuss whether or not they'd want to consider changing that time.
Yeah, either that or we can just have a motion at the beginning of the agenda to extend it to 5 minutes. And you would want to make it the same across the board so that everybody feels as though they have the equal time to be able to say things.
Okay. I think we're done sharing this.
Nicole,
I have a question for Scott, but
go ahead.
Just to recap, you guys did adopt the 2-minute time in your first Zoom meeting of the Transportation Commission. So if the 5 minute is something you want to do, you just need to readopt it as a 5-minute time limit. So you did adopt a 2-minute time limit at your first Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Thanks, Emily.
I have one question for traffic calming since for Scott House. And that you've listed a couple of things that really aren't calming that we have. One of them being the radar sign doesn't seem to have an effect. So I just had a question on, because this is shown as traffic calming as the center median, and on White Hills Drive east of Abbott, there is a center median and also kind of a traffic circle at a intersection at Portage Path. Were those there for traffic calming, and do they make a difference?
So those were one of the first few installments of traffic calming, and to be honest, I think they will do localized calming, but we've had concerns from the neighborhood about cut through traffic and speeding as well. And we shared that with the police, and the police increased enforcement, and that helped those issues to subside. So the other interesting thing that if you look at the Grand Rapids one, there's been a history in time where people would install traffic calming and they would come to regret it. And Grand Rapids was tired of that. So they said, well, if you asked for it, you're going to have to, and we install it, you're going to have to pay to remove it. So if they put down speed bumps and things like that, because speed bumps typically penalize those that live in the neighborhood. And they cut 2 ways.
I have a question for Scott House too. Like for like a level 2 and 3, like intervention, like who's determining which remedy is appropriate? And it kind of alluding to like what Alice brought up in her call, like usually the person with the complaint like recommends some sort of intervention, but that's not always like backed by data or appropriate. So who's actually determining which remedy is appropriate?
So under the city's current action plan, it's going to go by the amount of speeders or speeds over the standard speed limit. So and if you look at that, there's, if you're the average speed of 33 would authorize up to a higher level. But it goes back to stop signs. That's going to come down to what's warranted and other movable features.
So Scott, if I think this is a database, right? So if you have somebody is collecting the data and based on that, you decide the levels, right?
Yes, that would be data driven.
Yeah, it will be data driven.
Mm-hmm.
Within the level though, who's actually deciding which one? Like,
because under the current policy, it would allow, so if you follow our policy as it stands, it'd be a member of the commission, a member of the neighborhood, and a member of DPW engineering staff getting together. That's tough to coordinate. And so you look at Ann Arbor, they have a professional engineer develop a plan and they present it for everyone's feedback versus everyone working together, because it's tough to ask more of everyone. But also some people, the perception of what might be effective might you know, what on first impression might be, oh, this is going to be the most effective thing, where science or latest technology might indicate otherwise. Right.
If we were to adopt a new methodology, how would we go about doing that?
It would be the commission would develop a policy, they would approve it and submit it to council for consideration and approval.
So Scott, that means we might bring some other things, new technology, if there is a need.
Yes. Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, the next item was an item that I had asked Nicole to include into the agenda, and I'd mentioned this at our last meeting, is I would like the commissioners to bring up and talk about what they feel are important transportation or mobility issues in East Lansing. What I would like to share is this email I sent Nicole that basically this is the East Lansing Police Department compiles the top 10 accident locations in the city of Lansing. And so there's some commonality along this. There obviously, you know, the Hagedorn Road, the Lake Lansing Road, it's all of the higher speed roads in the area. And so that's one thing that I wanted to just table and say that we ought to start looking at whether there's a pattern there that's something we can discern out of it or shed light to. The other thing, again, is what I mentioned earlier, is that we have an aging population, not just here, but all over the country. And one of the issues that we have is as we look at what's going on in the automotive space, we're actually creating a greater digital divide. You know, nobody's going to buy an autonomous vehicle. The cheapest one on the planet's $140,000, right? And that's the Chevy, the Cruze. If I'm going to spend $140,000 on a car, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini Alfieri. I'm not going to buy a Chevy Cruze. But the reality is that we're going to start, the people that can afford to ride share or to afford an autonomous taxi are not your average person. You know, these are people that are needing mass transit. There are people that need to have buses. There are people that need to be going to places that are friendly. And so one of the things I think at some point we should start gathering data and look at is how do we support what historically is marginalized groups, the handicapped, the very young, the very old, the lower income, in terms of addressing, is our transportation policy that we're working forward with going to provide us with an equitable future for all the players in it? And that was my purpose for bringing that up. And I'd like this to be a standing item for us to be able to talk to at every meeting going forward, because Joshua may have an idea next time, or John the next time, or Julie, you know, all the times. So, so that was my talk on it. I don't know if anybody else had anything that they wanted to weigh in with.
Scott, if I may, you know, so what is our decision on the traffic calming? You know, so what is the next step here? Well, I think we moved it, you know, so it's not clear, right?
The next step was that the committee of three, we're going to identify who the other stakeholders are in this environment and work with Nicole to get them to invited for a discussion with us at a future commissioner meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so with nothing else to talk about that, the next item on the agenda was the unfinished business agenda for the Highland Avenue speeding issue update. And who is reporting on that?
I will report a little bit on that. So I just wanted to give an update. Obviously, this is an agenda item that will continue to be on our radar until we can get through the traffic impact studies and such moving forward. But maybe I should share my screen here, maybe. I did get a report from the Neighborhood Action, Resource Committee. I can never remember what they're called. My apologies. And they indicated that they've spent about almost 20 hours out there. Let me see if you guys can see this. You see my screen here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, they went out there and they started getting their officers to kind of clock, you know, different cars. You know, you see some higher speeds here at 35, and then you see over here it was a resident. You see some other higher ones here, and they weren't residents. So you see that cut through traffic as well as the traffic by the people that are living there. You can see that they've, you know, indicated that there has been some citations, and you know, that they might not be stopping at stop signs and things like that. So they're getting a lot of hours, a lot of observations out there, which is good overall. So, you know, they're continuing on with this endeavor until, you know, they'll see some hopeful improvements.
Good. Good. Okay. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. The next item.
Just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
That data is being collected manually, correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Assume, yeah.
I just fear that if we need to, you know, really make a decision on this, we don't have enough data. 20 hours is great, but is there a means by which we can install a smart camera or a device that's consistently monitoring so we can analyze data over 30, 60, 90 days to be able to make, you know, really informed decisions and really understand the landscape of what's happening on that road?
We haven't talked about the longer term, that 30, 60, 90, but in conjunction with this data set, we would be putting out the radar signs there again, gathering both directions for longer periods of time.
I think part of our discussion along those lines, especially with regards to data collection, was the suggestion that we wait until MSU is back at full capacity so we can get more accurate data. So this is, I think, helpful data that the neighborhood resource team can gather now and get some practice in thinking about these challenges, but we will enhance it with a more traditional data collection strategy when campus is full.
Correct.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Do we have any other committee reports? Hearing none. I have an announcement that I'll do under the next item, but as the chair, I do not have any reports. Julie, as vice chair, do you have any reports?
I do not. Thank you.
Any of the commissioners? Okay, now we're moving to what I typically call roundtable. It's where we give every commissioner, every participant actually, a minute or two to bring up anything that they think is of relevance or important for the commission to know. Joel, we'll start with you. Do you have anything?
There we go. Right now, it's the issue of snow on sidewalks probably more than anything. And going from here in the neighborhood to downtown, and it has always bothered me since I had a store down there. The difficulty of making the transition from the neighborhood to the downtown, and how many things there are impediments there. And right now, especially this packed snow on the sidewalks.
Okay. Joshua, do you have anything to bring up?
Just a follow up on I brought this up in our November meeting, the missing walkway sign at Abbott Avenue near the new Abbott building. The reason why I bring this up is I personally walk this crosswalk very frequently. And I was curious if we had a further update on that. And my last understanding was we were waiting on the developer of the property to get back to us with an update. And just the reason why I keep bringing this up is I don't want to create a precedent in the city where, especially if we're going to have new buildings coming up, which is great, but I don't want to create a precedent where these private developers can, build their buildings and then not hold up to their obligations once their building has been built and occupied.
Yeah, I can give an update on that. So yes, we are continuing to go back and forth with the developer on this. The delay, started with, there's supposed to be a brand new traffic signal at this location. That got delayed for installation. And during their construction, they removed the pedestrian crossing signal from that quadrant, thinking that it was going to be reinstalled very quickly with the new signal, which now with the delay of the installation of the signal, that's where we get into this point. We have spoken to them, say, hey, we really need to get this installed. So what are your options? And they brought forth, well, we can install a, I don't know if it was solar powered or just a temporary sign, pedestrian sign in that location. A couple hindrances with that for them, it was cost, a little bit for us is, just more stuff right there on the sidewalk to be able to maneuver, with the snow and such during this times. So what is going to most likely happen is that crossing on the south side of that intersection will most likely be closed until they can get their signal installed, which they are planning to get that started in April.
So Josh, that means you're jaywalking.
But we're going to have a bit of a caveat there with them too, because as everybody knows, as people who are crossing in the downtown area don't always utilize the safest point crossing from point A to point B. So if closing that really isn't doing anything, then we need to go back to them doing something else.
Joshua, are there still people making that crosswalk all the time? That's
Dozens of people every day.
Yeah, that's probably worth considering, Nicole. Anything else, John?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to bring up again the on Grand River, the speed limit. The protected walkway by the Graduate Hotel is, when that went up, the speed limit sign there is 35 mile an hour in that area, which is westbound, before you get to People's Church and that unprotected pedestrian crossing there. I fear that when that protected walkway comes down, that sign goes back up. And then on eastbound, you have a 35 mile an hour sign east of Delta Street where you're coming into the 25 mile an hour zone. It seems like we're inviting speed in an area where we're trying to cross there. And we're still downtown. And for westbound, you have two lanes fighting for one lane in there. And the speed, I think, would be worth checking there. But I'd like to see that 35 mile an hour sign proceed further west and not before you get to People's Church. And I know that's an MDOT item, but I still think that's a concern crosswalk there in front of People's Church.
Okay. Troy.
To kind of add on to like Josh and John's points, like COVID is sort of like tamped down on the foot traffic in that part of downtown. And like, as they've just pointed out, like there's like a few crosswalk concerns that once fall, I mean, fingers crossed, will be like normally back in session or somewhat close in the fall, could become real issues with the big increases in foot traffic just because of the density that's been increased by those 3 buildings that are like right in the that vicinity. So we probably should try to take on some of those issues sooner than later. I think because they're just gonna get worse with the density increases and then foot traffic returning to normal. So.
What I would like to encourage the commissioners to do is if you have a topic that you want talked about, shoot it to Nicole so that she can include it on the agenda. Okay. Sid.
You know, I don't have much since we are not going out too much, but I have a quick question on, you know, I think under the impression that they are going to redo Abbott between Lake Lansing and Saginaw. And I saw they have done some maintenance on it. So is it, I think it's going to be an overlay, right?
No,
Or they're done?
No, the project is is in conjunction with MDOT. It's an MDOT local agency project on Abbott Road from Saginaw to Lake Lansing, and this will be a crush and shape project. So it will reset the roadway during this or throughout this corridor. And as part of this is also a 4-to-3 conversion of this area. So we will be adding bike lanes here as well.
And Nicole, what is the timeline for that? Is it starting this May or in?
That's about right. The bid letting is in March through MDOT, and by the time we get all the contracts circulated, it's about May would be right.
Yeah, it's orange barrel season.
Yep.
Yeah, but then why they are doing patching on that if it is going to be, or probably this is, you know, emergency maintenance, right?
I think we did some preventative maintenance just to be able to
survive few months, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So
got it.
Okay, Julie, any comments for roundtable?
I just wanted to follow up and kind of connect some of the dots from the last meeting. I know that John brought up again his concern about our role or the appropriate response to the parking dispute happening in Flower Pot. And my position on our role hasn't necessarily changed, but what has changed is the formation and the full capacity of the neighborhood resource team. And so I don't know what process is required to have them reach out to the neighborhood association and see if they can be of any service. But since they have listed parking disputes specifically as one of their action items, I would like to have that brought to their attention in case they can be supportive as the neighborhood looks to see if it can resolve that conflict.
If we can get them at our March meeting, I think,
yeah,
you know, we just inform them, we want to talk about a number of items.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we can go either way. We can bring that up to them at our next meeting, or we can try to put it in front of them now and then have a follow-up conversation at the next meeting about how effective is that? What is their strategy? How do they approach these kinds of challenges and disputes?
Right. Scott, do you have any comments for roundtable?
No, just I'm excited to hear the topics and look forward to seeing improvements to the traffic calming and other things. And also, don't forget, we have a non-motorized policy that we'd like to get your input on possibly next fall or spring once we get some more people back at school for some input. Okay. And also, please don't forget to ask Nicole about updates on other projects because there's a lot of great things going on here too. And yeah, a lot of good things happening. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Nicole, do you have any comments for roundtable?
Yes, I have some comments on some updates on projects.
I would actually like you to add that to our agenda for every session, is for you to give us an update on whatever you think is projects that we should be aware of.
Yep, I can include that as an item and actually spell it out. So I'm not just going through the items that I can think of at the meeting. So
okay, perfect.
You know, as you indicated earlier, Scott, you know, May is, you know, barrel season, but this year we're going to move that up on a couple of, on an area in downtown, and barrel season's going to start here in a couple weeks down in the Evergreen area. So we are finally moving forward with the Evergreen Utility Improvements Project. We have that awarded to Sanborn Construction. They're going to be starting here, mobilizing even late next week. We still have to get some notices out and get with a few people, but we're gonna start that construction. It's a very important utility project for us, and in parts of kind of for this commission, another biggest thing is the extension of Albert Avenue all the way to Valley Court, including bike lanes. So, this is a great project. They are scheduled to start, as I said, here in the next couple weeks, and then they're going to move forward to hopefully getting that complete by June or July. So that's the most immediate one. The second one we already talked about, which was the Abbott Road project. We're also looking at some water main improvements projects. We have a larger one that was actually postponed due to COVID in the East Glencairn neighborhood. This has water main and large diameter sewer upgrades. This would be Harrison, North Lawn, Saginaw area, and there's some road reconstruction or mill and resurfacing in that area as well. We have some road improvements, local road projects, and this is Blanchette, Gainsborough, Roseland, Oakwood, Maplewood, down there at Grand River and Hagedorn area, and Charles and Division. We're gonna mill and resurface all of those roads.
Okay.
We also have some additional water main improvement projects on Collingwood, Kedzie and Sunrise. And we're going to also look to be upgrading some large diameter valves on Bircham. And this would be from Abbott to Hagedorn. And there's some in the alleys there as you go south of Bircham as well. And that would be, spot closures and stuff due to the replacement of those valves. And there's probably a couple other ones I'm missing.
Any update on the credit union?
The credit union is still postponed a little bit. Now they're shooting towards April for a start.
Okay. Brad, do you have any comments for Roundtable?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Emily, do you have any comments for Roundtable?
Nope.
Okay. I have one announcement to make. Back early in December, I was approached by the National Institute of Standards and Technology about creating a trade association for people in the teleoperation ecosystem. Teleoperation, you're most familiar with it as drones. But there's a massive amount of effort that's being done to teleoperate vehicles because people don't think autonomous vehicles are very safe. And we don't have a lot of capability there. You can't see very well. You don't hear at all because autonomous vehicles can't hear. And so they asked me to form the Teleoperation Consortium, which I have, and I'm going to be announcing it publicly later this week. But I just wanted to mention that it would also be like CVTA headquartered here in East Lansing. Did I miss anyone? Is there anyone online that we did not call on? Okay, with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn and thank our chair for a well-run meeting.
And we need a second.
I second.
Is there any objection to changing the motion to by acclamation? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned at 6:59. You all be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be safe.